Welcome to Sharing Hope. I'm Michael DiMuccio, your host today on behalf of Medi-Share, and with us is Andrew Pudewa. Andrew is the founder and director of IEW, the Institute for Excellence in Writing. He travels extensively for speaking of the issues related to teaching, writing, thinking, spelling, music with clarity, insight, practical experience, and humor. His seminars for parents and students and teachers have helped transform many a reluctant writer and have equipped educators with powerful tools to dramatically improve student skills. He is a graduate of Talent Education Institute in Japan, has a certificate, get this, of child brain development from the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential. According to him, though, his greatest endorsement comes from one of his students, an Alaskan boy, who called him the funny man with wonderful words. And so with that, we welcome Andrew Pudewa. Welcome to Sharing Hope.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Good to have you. It's funny. I recognized you from the GHC, the Great Homeschool Conventions, and I know you do a lot of work there speaking, and your face is prominent with them. So I do understand you were at the Fort Worth convention that was closed down with this whole coronavirus context. Talk a little bit about that experience and then how you've adjusted since then.
Yeah, well, the Great Homeschool Conventions, which of course Medi-Share has very generously sponsored extensively, we were going to have 7 events in Texas and other places, Florida, New York, South Carolina, the big one in Cincinnati, Ohio, and California. But the Texas event was the first one. So we were all there. My wife was a little nervous, like, really, should you go to a convention? I said, hey, I just came back from Thailand, if that didn't kill me, Texas isn't gonna hurt. But everyone was very happy. It was well attended. And my sessions were full, and the exhibit hall was active and buzzing. Everything was just rolling as normal. And then Friday evening, I was in the middle of doing I think it was a 6 o'clock talk, and someone came in and just said, excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but the city is shutting us down. Everyone has to be completely out of the building by midnight. And sorry about that, goodbye. And it was a little jarring, I think, to everyone. Most of the people, of course, were probably local, Texas residents. So, they could just, drive home the next morning, which is what I did. I live in Oklahoma, so that was easy. Other people had flown in, and so, okay, what do you do, But it was really the first hint that this season was going to take a very different turn than normal. And coming home, within a couple weeks, events just started dropping off the calendar. I've got a huge folder full of airline credit coupons because I've had, so many flights canceled. Fortunately, they're, waiving all the change fees for everyone. But my life is very different. I thought, oh, what am I going to do? But I've had all sorts of opportunities. A lot of online conferences have popped up. A lot more people wanting to do, podcasts and interviews like this one. And of course, kind of a fascinating new world where everyone is homeschooling, kind of, at least their kids are at home trying to do schoolwork, and parents, some of them are home with their kids all day for the weekdays, first time in a long time. So it's just been fascinating to hear the conversations that have circled around that. And then a lot of us who do curriculum and things, we've been scrambling to say, what can we offer? What can we do to help these families who are, unexpectedly or unintentionally now, for all practical purposes, homeschooling?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That is everybody, like you said, whether even teachers are homeschooling, with their, and of course parents now doing lots of things. And and hence this hub of information here called Sharing Hope. And again, thanks for spending time with us. I'd like to open some of the questions here with that endorsement of the Alaskan boy that said, "The funny man with the wonderful words." What does it do for you, just on a personal level, to hear things like that? When a student, whether they express it with their mouth or you see it in their work, what does that do for you?
I've been at this 25 years. 25 years ago, I started IEW, kind of a part-time thing while I was teaching violin and kinder music. And then in 2000, I went full-time, and then we started to create videos. And I mean, dozens, maybe hundreds of thousands of kids have watched our writing classes, seen me on video. And I never in my entire imaginings would have thought how powerful video is in terms of its ability to connect directly. They say, what, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth 10 times that, 100 times that. In terms of the, the heart connection, the smile transfers through, the mirth and joy. And so, I've got statements like that from kids and parents all over the world. And I have to say, I can't imagine being more blessed, in what I do, in terms of having something that is genuinely, meaningful, and more than anything helps kids actually learn to think better. Our little tagline for our company is listen, speak, read, write, think. And so many times I've heard that feedback from parents and teachers and kids themselves. So I'm too blessed. I don't know if it's even right to be so happy, but I am.
Sure, and very rewarding, as I can tell, from your response. And now, I think, what do these seminars look like? You get these dramatic results. Can you speak to the methods, the practicals within these seminars? Give people or our audience here a little window into what that looks like.
Sure. Well, our system of teaching writing, it's called Teaching Writing Structure and Style, is a little different than what many people experienced, say, in school or growing up or whatnot. A lot of people I meet are kind of frustrated with the subject of writing. Some people hated it in school and ended up going into maths or sciences and becoming, engineers or nurses, and now find themselves homeschooling and having to teach writing. Other people kind of were comfortable with that. They love writing and literature and English, maybe even majored in it. But when it comes to teaching kids, if they have some students who don't have that natural facility, they're kind of a little confused. How do I approach this child who's so different than I am? And so in our system, one thing that's hugely different is we don't kind of force kids to have to do too much all at once. When you think about it, writing is an incredibly, insanely complex thing. In fact, I've been contemplating this for years, and I think just the fact that human beings can write, right? That's just proof that God exists and he created us, because it's so insanely complex of an activity. But, to write something, you think, okay, first you have to have an idea. That idea must pre-exist. It can exist outside of you, or it can originate from inside your memory or imagination. But the idea must exist. So you have to be able to find an idea. Then you have to essentially speak that idea into existence, right? You have to take that, maybe it pre-existed in words, and that makes it a lot easier, or it pre-existed as an image or a feeling or something less concrete, but you have to speak it into existence. So you need the vocabulary to do that. Then you have to hear what you heard yourself say to yourself, right? Because if you can't hear what you're thinking, how do you hold on to it, right? So you have to hear yourself say you have to hear what you said to yourself. Then you have to remember what you heard yourself say to yourself, and try to then figure out or remember how to spell the first word in that sequence, and the next word, and the next word, and the next word, and not lose track of what you were thinking. And then you've got elements of, mechanics, punctuation, capitalization that have to work its way into that, along with the handwriting. I mean, it's so complex. It's just amazing anybody can do it at all. But one of the things I notice is with children who dislike the process of writing, it's very often because they are overwhelmed. Because if there's a breakdown at any part in that process, finding an idea, speaking it into existence, hearing what you said, hearing what you thought, and then remembering what you thought, and then the mechanics, the physical mechanics of putting it into letters on screens or paper. If there's a breakdown anywhere in that process, you have to go back and start all over again, which for any of us, it would just be frustrating. And so some kids, they just get overwhelmed with that process. So I would say the distinctive about our approach with structure and style is we take the complexity of the process and break it down into very small, manageable steps so that almost anyone can be successful by doing one thing at a time and not getting overwhelmed.
Wow, there is a lot of complexity in that, and it's actually bringing me to your one of your certificate, your degree in child brain development. And I'll bet that really kicks in or weaves into all of this. And so, when I saw that, I was like, wow, I wonder when you got this passion or this drive to receive that education in child brain development. Take us through that story. Like, when did you know that was like your call, or what you really wanted to dedicate your life to?
Well, I had gone to Japan. I had traveled and I lived in Japan for 3 years, and I studied with Dr. Shinichi Suzuki at the Talent Education Institute in Matsumoto in Japan. I don't know if you're familiar with Suzuki Method. It's a very well-known, worldwide, incredibly successful method for teaching young children to play musical instruments. I grew up a Suzuki kid. I started playing the violin around 5 years old, played it, all through childhood into high school, quit for a few years, and then was kind of looking for what do I want to do with my life. And I thought, I could probably teach violin. So I investigated a little bit and discovered the people who were really good at it had been over to Japan, studied with Suzuki, understood what they were doing very well. So I actually went there, lived there, learned Japanese decently well, studied some martial arts and other things. But mostly I graduated from the Talent Education Institute. And I wasn't sure where I was going to go. I was kind of free at the time. And I came across a book by Glenn Doman called How to Multiply Your Baby's Intelligence. The reason was because a friend of mine who is bilingual, she had translated an interview between Dr. Suzuki and Glenn Doman into Japanese. And I got a copy of the English version, and I was just astounded with this guy, Glenn Doman. This is incredible insight. What he understands, I've got to learn. So I got a hold of his book and read it, and I thought, I got to go there. It doesn't matter, I've just got to go there. So I wrote a letter. I said, I read this book. I'm fascinated. I understand you have some kind of school and your kids play Suzuki violin, and I'm finishing up in Japan. I'd love to come and work for you. And the Janet Doman, Glenn's daughter, the director, she wrote back and said, well, we don't really need a violin teacher. We have a couple right now, but we're always interested in young people who are interested in what we're doing. And we're going to have a team in Tokyo in a few months, seeing families there. So if you would like to come and see what we do with families, we'll put you up and you can find out. So I did, and they were very hospitable and paid for my hotel room, and it blew my mind. I didn't actually know when I first looked into it that the main work of the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential was teaching programs of treatment for to families with brain injured children. I thought it was all about, accelerated kids and, this incredible school where everybody was doing amazing things. But when I started to, hang out with them the first few days, I thought, this is the greatest thing happening on the earth. This is where blind children begin to see, and paralyzed children begin to crawl, and deaf children begin to hear, and hyperactive children start to calm down and read, and Down syndrome children become articulate. And I was watching essentially kind of the stream of a miraculous process, only it wasn't miraculous so much that it was the principles that had been researched by the staff of the institutes for many, many years. And so I was sold, and I said, I don't care. I'll pay to come and work for you if I have to. And they said, no, you can work for free. You don't have to pay. So I did. I went to Philadelphia. I lived there for 3 years. I just had an incredible education there. And they had their own kind of certification program. And so much of what I learned there has carried on into my, coaching and working with families. If you go to a homeschool convention and you meet a family with 3 kids, there is about a 50 or more % chance that one of those kids has some kind of issue, some kind of problem, an ADD or, an autistic spectrum kind of thing, dyslexia, dysgraphia. It's, and in fact, that is, I don't know if you're aware of that, that is the number one reason, the fastest growing reason why people choose to homeschool, is they have special needs kids and the schools available to them are not able to meet the needs of those special needs kids. And so homeschooling becomes a very serious and viable option for them. So that's kind of the history of how I got into it. I would be there to this day because I was happy. I was profoundly happy living there, working there. It was essentially a volunteer position. I got room board, $50 a week for toothpaste, but it wasn't my destiny. The Lord had different calling, I think. And so because of a kind of a family crisis, I had to leave, move to Montana where my mother was living. And that took me on a different path. But I'm so blessed to have that background and be able to, help point people in the right direction and advise them and really help relieve anxiety in many cases about they've got kids who are, struggling in one way or another. And
Sure.
So that's the history.
And what an interesting journey that is. And it always amazes me how God moves people through life. Well, here you are now, you have, this wealth of experience now from the origin of being in Japan and then coming back, obviously, to the States and working with so many people, and here we are on Sharing Hope in the wake of COVID-19 and the shut-in. What advice could you give, say the mom or dad tuning into this, and they're looking to enrich their children with, say, creative writing or just thinking processes in general? What advice could you give them, especially for this context right now?
Well, I think, a lot of people are discovering this is kind of not quite a vacation where you have to go figure out what to do to occupy yourself. It's a very relaxed time for many families. In fact, my wife and I try to go walking, every afternoon, 5:30, sometimes early, 3:30. And we are amazed at the number of people outside on the streets, middle-aged mom playing hoops with her teenage kids at 4 PM on a weekday. This would not be seen under normal times. Kids on bicycles, whole families, outside. And of course, we've had a super beautiful spring here in Oklahoma. But I really believe families are having a chance to reconnect just with the time and you don't have the busyness. So many families are, okay, got to go to school. Okay, after school activity. Okay, the weekend's all scheduled up. Okay, we got to do this and that. And we're exhausted. Let's watch a show. Let's play a video game. And that pulls people. None of that's really possible these days. So first of all, I'm encouraging people, just relish your time together. And I think people are discovering that you can only look at screens so long until you want to play a board game or go outside or make cookies or just do stuff that parents and kids used to have more time to do. So there is a silver cloud on that. In terms of developing language aptitude, in particular writing, I have a number of talks. One of them, I'm happy if you want to put up any links or whatever for people. One of my talks is available. It's called Nurturing Competent Communicators. And a little over half of that talk explains why the single most important thing you can do to help a child become a good writer, a good speaker and writer and user of their language is to read out loud to that child in huge quantity every day. And there are so many reasons why reading out loud is of benefit. Number one, if kids are reading on their own, they're often struggling, they're skipping words they don't know, they're not necessarily hearing the flow or the beauty, the completeness of the syntax of the language. So, of course, it's important for kids to read on their own and improve their own decoding skills. Reading out loud to them, especially above their own decoding level, is so intellectually enriching. It builds vocabulary. It furnishes the mind with a wider variety of sentence structures and linguistic patterns, even, the literary devices, the schemes and tropes that make language so beautiful. So reading out loud every day to all kids, even teenagers, at or above their decoding level, will be the number one thing. In fact, when I go to conventions, I will very often meet someone who says, I write pretty well, but I don't remember being taught. I just kind of could. And I will generally ask a question like, did one or both of your parents read to you out loud when you were young? And 9 times out of 10, they will think for a minute and say, yeah, actually, that's true. My dad read the Reader's Digest every day at dinner. Or, yeah, our families read, scripture out loud every day. Or, yeah, my mom always read to us, bedtime stories, something like that. Because that, in my experience, is the number one most important thing you can do to help a child become a good speaker and writer of English, because you're furnishing the mind with good language. And if you don't get it in, you won't get it out. It's probably even more important today as children choose different forms of, pastime, entertainment. You look at 30 years ago, before screens were ubiquitous, what could kids do if they're bored? They would basically read. I've seen, I was like that. I'd just carry a book, and if I'm bored because mom's talking or whatever, I'd be able to read a book. We go on a trip in a car, read till you get car sick, then stop. And then these days, it's much less likely to see kids reading a book as it is to see them playing a game on a screen. And so I think that just the culture of reading is kind of dying out. And if we as parents want to try and help, maintain or restore even that culture of literacy, we need to take the, lead on this and just make time. And now we have time. The kids don't have to be in school 6, 7 plus extracurricular activity 8. You've got hours in a day, and take one of those hours and read a good book that you always wanted to read to your whole family, and let them play with Legos or draw pictures or do whatever they want with their hands, and take in the beautiful richness of language through their ears.
Really good stuff there. Let me ask you this now. You talk about reading aloud, and hopefully that is giving indirectly children the creativity. But how do you approach, say, a reluctant writer? In terms of structure, style, can you offer some components in that realm?
Sure, sure. Our system of teaching writing is based on imitation. And a lot of kids in school, their experience of being taught writing is here's some paper, you know, remember something, imagine something, tell what you think or feel about something, draw a picture and write about it. And this process can be, I've seen this happen, as young as first, second, third grade. And, some kids are okay, but a lot of them just don't have a clue. I mean, truth is, if you find a reluctant writer and you have a conversation, why do you not like this? After you get past the tautologies, like, cause it's hard, cause I don't like it, cause I can't do it. They basically will come to this statement: I can't think of anything. I don't know what to write.
Hmm.
Which, shouldn't terribly surprise us because they're just little kids. It's not like they have decades of, reading and thinking and traveling and discussing. Plus, kids operate a little differently. I mean, we can be more objective, right? We can think about last week, next week, last month, next year, something on the other side of the world, abstract concept. Kids are very, immediate. Like, they're always thinking about right now. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it so I can be done with it and go make forts. So our system, we begin by removing the problem of you have to think of what to write, and we give content. So here's a little Aesop fable. Here's some interesting information about a person or a place or an event. Here's something that, a source text is what we call it, that is at or below the reading level of the child. And then we teach them how to make a little keyword outline. By reading a sentence, choose a few words, read the next sentence, choose some words, read the next sentence, put the original away, verbally try to tell back that little fable, that little bit of information. And, with reluctant writers, you want to keep things short. You don't want to have anything too long where they get exhausted. And maybe, they take a break and then come back. And then the next step would be they get to retell or rewrite this fable or this information. So they're not having to start by thinking of everything to write, because that can blow them out of the water right off the bat. Instead, we remove the problem of what to write so that we can get around the business of teaching how to write. And what that does is it immediately allows every child, even the most reluctant writer, to have an experience of success. Hey, I wrote a whole sentence. Hey, I wrote an Aesop fable. Hey, I wrote a paragraph. And then in our system, and I probably don't have time to go through all of the technical side of it, but through the 9 structural units of our system and through the stylistic checklist, as we gradually introduce that over weeks, months, or years, we move the student from that dictated content toward the blank page and the essay, where someone gives them, here's your topic, here's your subject, here's your prompt, tell what you think about that. And they then have to operate with just what they carry around in their mind. And this pathway is very successful. Like I said, I have dozens, if not hundreds of thousands of students who have done superbly well walking this path. And imitation kind of gets a bad rep in the modern world, like Ralph Waldo Emerson said, envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide. This is foolish. I'm a music teacher by primary profession, right? Violin teacher. Learning a skill is all about imitation. I mean, everything children learn, they learn basically by imitating those in their environment, whether it's language or movement or music or behavior and character or anything. Think about cooking. What if people just said, okay, make food, and you've never done it before. And you're like, okay, what do you need? You need recipes, you need systems. And through the training, by following a recipe or a system and having some successes, some challenges. Then you move into experimentation, elaboration, and then you reach a point of creativity. I love to cook, and I very seldom ever look at a recipe. Sometimes I do, but mostly I've internalized through that discipline of following and imitating someone else who knew what they were doing. And writing is the same way. Music is the same way. Fine arts are the same way. So we must not be afraid of imitation because, as George Bernard Shaw said, it is not just the sincerest form of flattery. It is the absolute best way to learn anything.
Excellent. And I couldn't help but note you mentioned a few moments ago, when it came to reading aloud, but you used the phrase, we all have hours in the day now. And so without, belaboring too much or picking your brain too much here, how are you spending the extra hours now being at home? I know you're doing a lot of online things, as you mentioned, but are you getting any innovative ideas or new projects in mind, or what are you dedicating those extra hours to these days?
Well, yeah, I do have several writing projects that are going on. I'm working on a book which will be titled, it's very different than anything else I've ever done. This one is called How to Learn, Tell, and Remember 100 Excellent Jokes. And so I'm going to be combining the use of keyword outlines and telling back from keyword outlines, and then using mnemonic devices, especially the medieval memory palace. I don't know if you've ever heard of that idea, but it was a technique that was used for actually over 1,000 years. People used a system of being able to remember things. And so I've been reading a few books on memory techniques and development. And so I'm going to set it up so that any student can actually learn and then practice telling, and then have a system to remember 100 excellent jokes. I think this might be my best-selling product ever. So I've been working on that a little bit, catching up on emails, but mostly, life goes on. Our office is kind of empty, but I don't know. Skype meetings and teleconference and phone calls and, like I said, these online seminars. And I will say it's been very nice not being in airplanes and hotels, because that way I'm home, having dinner with my wife and being able to see my grandchildren. I have 7 kids, all grown. My youngest is 20. She lives basically right around the corner, and she had her first baby in December. So they're real close, and we see them often. And my wife is a much needed grandmother at this time. And then I have another daughter with 3 children. They live about an hour from us. So it's been good. I've spent more time with family and relax. And I've been reading more. Reading on airplanes, I can do it, but it's not as relaxing as the comfortable chair with the nice light in the home and the cup of tea. And so I've been reading several books that I kind of always wanted to. And I should say I've just become phenomenally productive and started a whole new business and who knows what else. But I guess I'm a little bit decompressing from a couple decades of really intense travel and work.
Sure, and that's much needed, and that quality time, I'm sure, is being really appreciated by not just yourself but your family as well. As we land the plane here, I do understand that IEW has some really neat resources that people can get their hands on and get into. Can you give our audience here some directives as to where they can get more information or material to help improve their lives?
Yeah, when it became apparent what was happening, and conventions getting shut down, and of course more people kind of coming into the peripheral of our world, we put together a package of lessons that is completely free and does writing and some grammar in a fun way, our program called Fix It, and also vocabulary and literature suggestions. So we have 3 different levels. Level A is for elementary, grade 3 to 5. Level B is for middle school, level C for high school. And the link, it's very easy. It's iew.com/lessons2020. And it's 3 weeks of totally free video. You get to see me teaching a live group of children. It's the first 3 lessons in our new product, Structure and Style for Students, that's also being released this year after 3 years in the making. So that's the best way to kind of get a taste of what we do in terms of the writing, the grammar, the vocabulary, and the literature side. And then, of course, we have primary arts of language, reading and writing for young children, just beginning to read and write, 5, 6, 7 years old, K1, 2. And we have many other types of options, literature study, literary analysis, public speaking. One of my favorites, and I think that any family can jump in and do this, is poetry memorization. Oh, that's included in the Lessons 2020 is level 1. It's kind of like a Suzuki method for memorizing poetry. So 20 poems, and you get the audio, the MP3 of me reading the poems, plus the coloring sheets and the poem with some annotations. And the idea being that a child learn a poem, keep saying that every day while they learn another poem, keep saying both those poems every day while they learn another poem, keep saying every poem they've learned every day. And then, in weeks or months or longer, they would have memorized all 20 poems in level 1 of our program. And then if you like that, you can get the rest of it and learn 100 or 80 more. It's wonderful. Poetry memorization, just fantastic. So that's how people can kind of get an introduction to what we do at IEW, Institute for Excellence in Writing. And we've got great customer service people, all of whom are working from home. But you can call, you can email, you can chat during business hours, and we'd love to help you make the most of the added opportunities you have. Hear the silver lining of this cloud that we're all experiencing.
Fantastic. That is a fantastic resource, very comprehensive and full. And so I'm sure our audience here, our viewers, will appreciate that. And Andrew, we appreciate you taking the time, coming in, sharing your heart from anecdotes to practicals. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing hope. We'll see you again.
Thank you, Michael. God bless you.